So I know everybody's probably wondering, how did you decide to have your tits cut off? Obviously, I can joke about it because it's something for me that just feels a little bit lighter now that I've gone through it. But at the time, there was definitely more heaviness to it. So I actually got genetic testing done in June of 2023. In that genetic testing, I tested positive for the genetic mutation, the BRCA gene. I just went into my OB's office and I filled out a risk analysis assessment, basically to see how much risk I had in order to get the testing performed and get it covered by insurance. They performed the testing in the office. It was just a simple blood draw. And then I received the results about 2 weeks later. The results just came and said positive for the BRCA genetic mutation, BRCA1 genetic mutation. So like I've said before, that makes me susceptible to a couple different kinds of cancers, and one of those was breast cancer. So after you become positive, my OB actually reached out to me and gave me a resource to get connected with a genetic counselor. And then I was given a referral to a breast specialist in town and needed to go see them in order to figure out the next steps. So obviously, when you're diagnosed with something like a genetic mutation like this, it can be a little bit alarming because you're like, oh my God, like, am I going to get cancer tomorrow? Am I going to get cancer next month? Am I going to get cancer in 10 years? When am I going to get cancer? Am I going to get cancer? And start, like, a lot of things start to run through your head, and you kind of start to think, well, how is this going to impact me? And it kind of starts to feel like a weight. So essentially, speaking to a genetic counselor and seeing a breast specialist should help you navigate through all of those feelings. I personally did not speak to a genetic counselor because I was pretty clear on the direction that my genetics were going to take me based off of my family history. And I had kind of already decided a long time ago in life that if I was BRCA positive, that I would just go forth with a double mastectomy. However, I did go see a breast specialist that was referred to me, and that is a whole different story for a whole other time. That experience did not go well whatsoever. The experience was probably the craziest medical experience I've ever had in my life. And thankfully, I am a nurse and was able to go and do my own research. But the lack of information he provided me and the lack of support he provided me really opened me up to be very vulnerable to make bad decisions in this journey for myself. So the doctor actually comes into the room and asks me some completely inappropriate red flag questions, and then proceeds to ask me if I've had my babies yet or had children yet. And I said no. And then tells me, well, you just wait till after that happens, and then we can talk about having a mastectomy after that. He did educate me on the fact that I would now have to have more screening done than the average person. So I would need to have a mammogram or a breast MRI every 6 months. So I left that appointment feeling pretty overwhelmed. Really, my next thoughts leaving that were not about how to manage being BRCA1 positive now. It really was more about, okay, well, now I need to have kids, and now I need to do this with my life and do this with my life. And it felt very overwhelming because he said all those things needed to happen before I had my mastectomy. So it made me feel very rushed in my life, and that made me feel very overwhelmed. I felt very out of control in that situation, and I felt not any better, actually probably worse than when I went in. So I started doing more of my own research. I did go have a mammogram performed, and after that, I will admit that I didn't have the breast MRI in the 6 months later like I was supposed to, which is a mistake. The whole purpose of finding out if you have a genetic mutation is in order to protect you and make sure that you can get early intervention. So doing the screening is incredibly important. So, I've had the mammogram. It's probably 8 or 9 months later, and I am in a bookstore. I walk past this book right here. I open it up to a section that talks about BRCA1 positive and being BRCA, having the genetic mutation. In there, it starts to tell me all these statistics about how when you are BRCA1 positive, you then need to think about your risk window being 10 years prior to the last person who was diagnosed with cancer. So my mom being diagnosed at 37 then put me at risk for being diagnosed at 27. So I was very much so in my risk window because I was only 29 at the time. I then keep reading, and then I start to read about how my risk for getting breast cancer, being BRCA1 positive, skyrockets even more after having a baby. Now, mind you, the breast specialist that I just saw 8 months ago told me that I should just go on about my life and have my babies, and then we'd talk about double mastectomy later. That information really struck me. I've started to think about things a lot differently. I started to think, okay, well, it's not that I need to have babies now and rush my life. It's that I need to take control of my health right now. In the coming weeks, I started doing a lot more research about seeing breast specialists in the area and about having a double mastectomy and how all of that works. I ended up finding a breast specialist about 45 minutes away from me, and he was amazing, a godsend. I could tear up just thinking about this man. I had my first appointment to see him a week before I turned 30. And basically, in that appointment, he sat there with me for an hour and answered every single question that I had for him. And he talked to me about the importance of screening and how I really needed to take charge of my health at this time because of my genetic history. We talked about the different types of mastectomy reconstruction that are available to me and what the mastectomy process looks like. I'll post another video about red flags from a breast specialist and green flags. My first breast specialist, well, he wasn't mine. The first breast specialist I saw, he's a walking red flag. The second breast specialist, who was my breast specialist, he is a walking green flag. So anyways, that's when I decided that this was what I was going to do, and we moved forward with the process. And over the next coming months, we planned out exactly what was going to happen with my mastectomy and then my reconstruction. And then I just ended up having surgery about 4 months later. In that whole entire process about the genetic testing and everything, and then finding a breast specialist, really what I found is that choosing the right providers really made a huge difference in how this whole situation went for me. A lot of it is going to be determined by choosing the correct provider for you. Making sure that you're going to a provider that is supportive of you, that educates you, that walks with you throughout this process. That was super transformative for me. And I am incredibly grateful to my doctors who walked along with me in this journey, all the way from getting the genetic testing done and getting that covered by insurance, all the way through mastectomy and reconstruction, and all the other healthcare providers that walked with me through this process. So, long story short, that's how I decided to get my tits cut off. So, we'll definitely cheers to all those doctors out there that are supporting the women the way they should.